Parents' Rights in Education was conceived in 2009 and became a tax-deductible nonprofit in 2011. In May of 2019, PRE held its first soapbox event, America's Cultural Crisis. Should we stay or should we go? Author of Get Out Now was the keynote speaker. Mary Hassan's speech is featured on the PRE website. We decided to have another soapbox, May 2nd of the following year, 2020, featuring Walt Heyer, author of Trans Life Survivors. 7 weeks beforehand, Oregon Governor Kate Brown declared a state of emergency to control the spread of the China virus. During the following year, in response to repeated emergency shutdown restrictions, PRE rescheduled the event 4 times and changed the event venue 3. It was renamed the Northwest Safe Schools Summit, and more speakers were invited to present. The result was a day-long dive into the complex issues plaguing K-12 public schools. Because of the unrest and militant violent protests in Portland, Oregon, it was decided to move the location from the Portland airport to a venue in the suburbs. The venue owner was adamant PRE not advertise the exact location until 24 hours in advance, so as to avoid possible negative attention caused by detractors and protesters. We are thrilled to share these videos from the first Northwest Safe Schools Summit in the hopes you will be enlightened and empowered to take action. Please watch them in order, as there is a natural progression you won't want to miss. Vernadette Broyles is President and General Counsel of Child and Parental Rights Campaign, a non-partisan, not-for-profit, public interest law firm founded to protect children and defend parental rights against the harms of gender identity ideology. Vernadette practices in the area of Title IX, parental rights in education, family law, and child protective services litigation, and has served for years as a guardian ad litem for children in court. Vernadette and her team at Child and Parental Rights Campaign represented Parents' Rights in Education to appeal a ruling against our lawsuit, Parents for Privacy versus Dallas School District, in November of 2017. CPR Campaign appealed these lower court rulings to the Supreme Court of the land in 2020.
Case, thank you so very much for being a part of this important event and really a part of the counterculture to a culture that is increasingly set against parents being able to raise their own children in accordance with their own belief system and in accordance with what they know to be best and right for their child. We began to work together. There are 3 attorneys in Child and Parental Rights Campaign. We come from the family law, the constitutional rights arena, and the child protective services arena. And we work with local attorneys in different parts of the country to assert various different claims where there are violations caused by the transgender agenda. And what we have discovered is that public schools are ground zero for the gender identity indoctrination that various different entities are seeking to impose upon our children. And it enters into schools, and you probably have seen this at some level. Initially as anti-bullying and tolerance policies, creating quote unquote safe spaces. It quickly moves then to indoctrination of teachers and administrators with the ideology. And then from there on to our children. The teaching then enters into the language, the pronoun codes, which is, it's a subtle thing, but how we speak is how we think and how we perceive the world. And so co-opting the language is a very deliberate strategy, and frankly, that one that needs to be resisted. One of the key cases that we encountered early on through Suzanne Gallagher was the case of Parents for Privacy versus Dallas School District out of your own Oregon. And this is, we came into the case at the appellate level after the Ninth Circuit had denied the parents their action. But this case involved a teenage girl who was identifying as a boy, was deeply gender confused, and who wanted to use the boys' bathroom. Here we go. I see my PowerPoint. Excellent. The school then created a transgender school access policy and opened the facilities to be used by any student in accordance with their self-identification. Interestingly enough, the girl's own custodial parent objected, and the school disregarded the parent's own instructions regarding her own child. It was the mother. The untold story behind this child is that this girl had been sexually assaulted by her own father as a young girl. She was deeply traumatized. She had deep psychiatric and psychological comorbidities and issues that were going on, which very clearly was behind undergirding this rejection of her body, and almost certainly a desire to feel safe from ever being assaulted again. Now, the policy required PE class participation, and it did not. And so therefore, these male students were being forced to change for PE or be in privacy facilities, locker facilities, bathrooms with this girl. And they were not permitted to be able to object. A petition they had put together was, the administration told they could not bring that petition, and any objection that they raised with the administration would be viewed as evidence of intolerance and bigotry. So their rights were entirely derogated. This child would be changing for PE in the locker room with a male teacher supervising her, i.e. watching her. That is just creepy, okay? Parents' Rights for Privacy and parents and students sued the school, and we got involved at the point at which we filed a petition for certiorari before the United States Supreme Court. Unfortunately, our petition was not taken up by the High Court. Frankly, I think it was just considered to be too hot a potato in the political environment that we're in. However, we will not stop fighting. And these cases continue to come up around the country. I will share with you in the next slide. We've encountered in Leon School District, Florida. They have put in writing in black or white in their LGBTQ plus support guide, this question and answer. If a student has exhibited behavior leading teachers to believe the student is LGBTQ plus, should parents or legal guardians be notified? The answer, astoundingly, is no. Outing a student, especially to parents, can be very dangerous to the student's health and well-being. As many as 40% of homeless youth are LGBTQ plus, and many of whom have been rejected by their parents, allegedly, for being LGBTQ plus. Outing students to their parents can literally make them homeless. This is a direct quote. In other words, what this is saying as a matter of school guidance is that parents are presumed to be a danger to their children. They are deliberately excluding and even deceiving parents. There's another place in this guide that talks about if the parents are not supportive of their child's false gender identity, how are they to handle that? And it is to use the actual legal name and actual sex of the child when the parent is present, but when they're not present at school, then use the child's preferred pronouns and the new made-up name when they're at school and parents don't know. So they're deliberately deceiving and excluding parents from decisions. This is a case that we've just decided we are almost certainly going to sue that school district. I want to go on to our next case that is pending here in Georgia at the Northern District, Federal District Court of Georgia, and that is the Thomas case, if we want to show that picture. What this case demonstrates is how tragic these transgender access policies are, basing access to privacy facilities, places where there's no adult supervision, where children, especially girls, are vulnerable to having harassment or violative behavior directed against them. Well, this case shows how tragic that these policies can result in tragedy. This is Pasha Thomas, and she is a parent in the City Schools of Decatur here in Georgia. What we saw here in Decatur was a common practice that we've seen literally around the country. A school board adopting a trans access policy entirely in the dark, without any notice to parents, without any input from parents. In fact, an open records request uncovered that the policy was developed and adopted between the superintendent and school board members via private emails, a clear violation of our sunshine laws, and probably in most states. Interestingly enough, this is the pattern we see around the country. You know, things done in the dark, nothing good is done in the dark. There's a reason that these entities do not like the sanitizing effect of the light in terms of being shown on them and what they are doing. Well, because this parent had no idea, then when she dropped off her 5-year-old child to kindergarten one morning, that her child would not be safe and that there would be a boy who identified at times as a girl who would have access to her daughter's facility. She was entirely rendered unable, disempowered, incapable of protecting her child from being assaulted because she was entirely excluded from this decision-making process. She dropped her daughter off, and that morning, a little boy entered the bathroom behind her because he was allowed to, because he proclaimed to be gender fluid, and he sexually assaulted her. It was a digital rape. He penetrated her. She struggled. She fought him off. Apparently, it was painful. And we have now, thankfully, we had filed a complaint with the Office for Civil Rights for the United States Department of Education. They found that there was a Title IX violation, and we are now suing them in federal court. And we have an extremely strong case at this point and are very much believing that we will be able to collect damages from this school. So what is the state of parents' rights in the law? Well, under Supreme Court jurisprudence, parents have a fundamental right to direct their child's upbringing and education. I'll go on to our next slide. This goes back to almost 100 years ago, Myers versus Nebraska and Pierce versus Society of Sisters, where the Supreme Court had ruled that parents have the primary role as the directors of the education of their children. Please remember this quote. If you're taking notes, write this quote down. The child is not the mere creature of the state. This is something that I think you'll hear Suzanne say often and others working with her say often. These cases is, in fact, Pierce versus Society of Sisters is where that expression comes from. It's the United States Supreme Court has declared this. And we need to remind school officials and state officials over and over, my child is not the mere creature of the state. This concept was reaffirmed in 1972 with Wisconsin versus Yoder. Again, that parental direction of not only the religious upbringing of your child, but the education of your child has a high place in our society. And then finally, in the Parham case, the case is very important with regards to schools because, as we've heard, schools they've broken out of their boundary of being merely educators, which is what we pay them to be, to now ascribe to themselves the right and the authority to be social services organizations, mental health organizations, medical care organizations. And next it'll be parents, but we're not going to allow that. And so we need to remind the school that under the Parham case, the Supreme Court has made it clear that parents have the high duty of making medical and mental care, mental health decisions for their child, not the schools. Quote unquote, parents can and must make these judgments, the Supreme Court has said. So understanding there is a constitutionally protected fundamental right to raise your child, make medical decisions for your child, direct their education. Where does the law lie? Well, unfortunately, the United States Supreme Court has left undefined the precise boundaries of the parents' rights, and that's part of the problem. We're frankly looking for the case that we could take up to the Supreme Court to make clear the boundaries of parental rights versus when the school encroaches them. But here are some guiding principles based upon the cases that we do have. Number one, schools has been understood as having the primary control over the learning environment and over curriculum. Okay, that doesn't seem to be so odd. The problem that we're having right now is that curriculum has been defined extremely broadly to include any information, any idea, any concept, any book that the school deems appropriate as part of the school day, i.e. books on same-sex marriage, i.e. curriculum on gender identity. And so it's a tough row to hoe at this point when curriculum is so broad, is defined so broadly. However, we have found a vein of case law that does make it clear that schools do overstep when they prompt children to change their beliefs, to embrace ideologies that are contrary to their family's beliefs, or to interfere with the medical and mental health care decisions of their child, or in family privacy matters that are a matter of family privacy. And so we need to hold this line and not step back from it. Now, you all are part of the Ninth Circuit. And the Ninth Circuit is, we know it's a challenge. Currently, parents do not have the right to prevent a school from providing sexual information to its students. That's part of that broad definition of curriculum. But even still, I would not back down for a moment when they go beyond that and they begin to indoctrinate your child, when they begin to affirm your child, which is a mental health decision, in a new and false gender identity. When they begin to encourage your child to take steps towards transition, which are medical decisions, or to turn their back on the family's belief system, that's family privacy. I would not back down for a moment from your right to be able to direct those decisions. Now, there are additional laws on the federal side that do back us up as well. And I want to discuss the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA. Maybe I've heard that. FERPA protects students' educational records. Remember that phrase, educational records, and personal identifying information from disclosure to third parties without parental consent. So some activists will have attempted to use FERPA to claim that that schools can't disclose gender identity to their parents, including the school that we have here in Florida. And I imagine that probably happens in various places in Oregon. That claim is directly contrary to the law of FERPA. So we need to challenge that, directly contrary to the law, because parents, not students and not school administrators, have all the intended FERPA rights of access to their minor child's educational records in the K-12 setting, or until their child has reached the age of majority or is legally emancipated. I don't know how that's defined in Oregon, but in most places around the country, that's 18 or legal emancipation. So any such claim, absolutely resist it. Now, FERPA protects information that is part of educational records. So what that means is that other information that a teacher or an administrator has, if they were told something, if they learned of it firsthand, if they observed with their own two eyes, that, for instance, a child is cross-dressing or cross-identifying, trans-identifying, that is not an educational record. So that's not even covered by FERPA. And then finally, parents have the right to require that the school correct records that are inaccurate or misleading, i.e., that records identify the child with accurate gender pronouns, with their accurate legal name, their accurate sex markers. Parents have the right to do that under FERPA. The information now, and the last thing I'll mention here is that information concerning a transgender child, not only can it not be kept from parents, in other words, it absolutely can and must be disclosed to parents. Non-identifying information concerning other students that may impact your child can be shared with you as well, i.e., non-identifying information about the fact that boys may be allowed or may be going to access the bathroom or the locker room or the shower where your daughters may be changing or using. That information can be shared with you under FERPA and should be and must be shared with you under fundamental parental rights principles. So again, don't back down. Now, as far as enforcement of this law, I believe I have a slide on that. There is a mechanism where parents can file administrative complaints with the United States Department of Education, and that would be with the Family Policy Compliance Office. And if you want to take a picture, that's the website. It would have to be, it's a very short fuse. You'd have to lodge your complaint within 180 days of the incident. There is no, at this point, there is no private cause of action to bring a lawsuit under current case law. Who knows? Perhaps the first, that can be challenged at some point, but as of right now, there is not. So what can we talk about in terms of parents proactively asserting their parental rights? We understand a little bit better what the law is, but there's much that you can do in the interstices of the law. You know, parents, I'm going to bring this down. I was going to talk about this later, but I heard someone say recently that children are having identity confusion because parents are having identity confusion. I think one of the most important things, and one of the things that Parental Rights in Education is doing, is helping to restore to parents a sense of our identity. We are the people whom nature, God, the law, all the above, have invested the responsibility and the sacred right to protect, train, and raise these precious lives. And we need to recognize, again, what is our identity? So therefore, we need to assert that identity and demand of the school to be included and informed of any instruction, any information, any discussion about any aspect of human sexuality, abortion, contraception, sexual orientation, and gender identity. And I would encourage you, this goes beyond any opt-out provision that your state law may have. It is you affirmatively asserting, and I would recommend through in writing, a letter that is filed, sent to your principal, your assistant principal, and filed in your child's file that makes it clear you're providing no consent to be involved in any of these discussions without you first being informed of it and without your consent. You're giving no consent to referrals to counselors, medical professionals, mental health professionals, social workers, either inside or outside the school for any reason without your consent, prior consent. I would also include there your lack of not consenting to participating in any extracurricular activities that you find to be potentially hazardous to your child's well-being. GSA clubs are probably the most significant ones. Wherever there is a very active GSA club seeking the attention of children, there's often mischief. I would certainly include that and any other social clubs where you suspect that indoctrination is going on. Now, These letters may, under your state law, they may not be legally enforceable. I've not studied Oregon law, but I would say it doesn't matter. Number one, it is sending the clear message, I understand who I am, I know my identity, and this is where I stand, and it puts the school on notice of your lack of parental consent in the event that there's a problem, because I could very well create the record that you need in a future lawsuit or future action that you need to take. So by all means, absolutely do it. The other thing I'll tell you on this as a practical matter is the counselor's office. I would absolutely instruct my child that under no circumstances do you go to the counselor's office to discuss anything but your grades or your class schedule. Any sort of problem that you're having, a personal problem, a sexual problem, anything, you come to mom or mom and dad, and we will take you to where we know we can trust, because the counselor's offices are becoming the indoctrination zones of many schools. They're absolutely not safe. Couple more things. Practically, I would also encourage you to use a really wonderful weapon called public records requests or FOIA requests. If you have any suspicion that your school is engaging in something that is harmful to your child, or harmful policies that are harmful to your child, or keeping things from you, in addition to asking them straight up for all your child's educational records, you can also submit a public records request to see what's going on in the dark. That's how we found out how the Decatur City Schools of Decatur secretly enacted this policy. And now that is one of the allegations in our complaint with the federal court. Stay engaged with what is happening in the school board meetings, what's happening in the classroom. Be present, be present. Check your child's history when their tablet comes home. These tablets that they're giving out to children are such a source of poison coming school day. I would check your child's history every single day, every single night, and let them know that you plan to do so until they leave the home, so that they know, mom and dad are watching, and you can catch if any of this poison is coming in through the school's tablet, through the internet. I want to share a resource with you in just a minute, but I will say this one more thing. I talked about parents overcoming our identity confusion. The place where this is probably the most important is at home. Parents need to begin to assert our authority, our parental authority, right in the home. And when we begin to observe signs of our children having confusion, our child wants to be called something that they're not, our child is wanting to just engage in activities that if your parental instincts are up, listen to them and begin to make clear to your child, we're the ones who have the maturity and the responsibility to protect you. And so we're going to say no to a variety of things that they may begin to want or demand. Shut down that iPhone, take it away, shut down the internet, whatever is necessary to protect your children. Start it at home and make it clear, honey, I love you, and I want to work with you. But we are the parents in this home and you are the child. And we're going to protect, and so this is how it is, and set down those boundaries and those rules that will help this child recognize I am under my parents' authority, and I'm not going to stray into these dangerous areas. And then from there, you assert that outward to the school as well. So I want to use the rest of my time with sharing a resource, because I don't want to just simply tell you about, these disastrous situations or even what the law says. But what our organization has done, watching what's happening around the country, is that we recognize schools were being flooded with flat out false, misleading information about the transgender agenda, what it is about, what it does to children, the medical aspects, just wholesale error and falsity. So we recognize, well, if we're going to help to change the culture of the schools, we need to provide accurate information for educators to use in setting their policies. And we took 10 months to create this next resource I'm about to share with you. It's called Navigating the Transgender Trend School Resource Guide, which was created by 4 attorneys in our organization, and 4 attorneys in total and 3 educators over the course of 10 months. So if we would play that video now, that would be fantastic. Navigating the Transgender Landscape School Resource Guide. A complex cultural phenomenon is sweeping through schools around the country. Children are declaring that they no longer identify as their own sex, but as the opposite sex, a new made-up gender, or no sex at all, creating significant challenges for K-12 schools. Trans-identifying students may ask that they be addressed by new names and pronouns. Students may demand access to opposite-sex facilities and to compete on the sports teams of the opposite sex. Such requests have significant consequences for all students, and for girls in particular. Until now, the only available resources for educators instruct schools to unconditionally affirm students' self-declared identities, without regard for the harmful effects on trans-identifying students, or the rights of other students. These ideologically driven materials omit important scientifically accurate information, and that affirmation often involves serious mental health and medical decisions with lifelong consequences for children. These materials also often encourage administrators to disregard parental rights when affirming a child's gender identity in school. This new National School Resource Guide is designed to fill the information gap. It gives school officials sound data, science, and guiding principles to respond effectively and compassionately to the transgender issue in our schools. The guide is based on the understanding that a child's sex is not merely assigned at birth, but rather their sex is an innate and immutable human characteristic directing their healthy physical development throughout life, and should thus be presented as a gift to be embraced, celebrated, and protected. This guide is based on the principles of respecting parental rights, recognizing healthy child and adolescent development, protecting the privacy, safety, and diverse beliefs of the entire student body, and maintaining the trust of the community. The guide explains factors influencing children to identify as trans and provides medical information on the effects of gender transition medical interventions. It provides answers to common concerns such as the health risks, suicide risk, and transgender regret. It gives an overview of trans activism in schools, equity in sports, and how Title IX and state sunshine laws affect policymaking. The guide offers specific policy recommendations for responding appropriately to trans-identifying students while respecting the rights of all students. It also offers guidance for communicating with parents of the community, a glossary of terms, and answers to frequently asked questions. The information in the guide is not our own thinking. It provides over 200 supporting footnotes and was reviewed and endorsed by 14 medical professionals. Our goal is to get this school resource guide into the hands of every school official around the country. This will give educators the information they need to make informed decisions on how best to accommodate trans-identifying students while respecting the rights of parents and of other students in their school. We can go on to the next slide, and just that last slide was for educators. If you wouldn't mind putting up the next slide that was in the progression there, I just wanted to let people know the Parent Resource Guide, which helped to spawn this guide we're looking at now. That is a wonderful resource designed for parents. We designed this for schools and educators. So we'd like to offer to put this into your hands. This is how you can order these. And we are working with parents and advocates all over the country to physically take these guides and put it to the hands of your school superintendent, your district superintendent, the principal of your school board members, because it is a tremendous eye-opener when educators realize that what they're doing at school would encourage children down a path that ends up in sterilization, medical harm, does not decrease suicidality. Our expectation is that many educators will no longer willingly continue to remain advocates for this indoctrination. And so, again, we encourage you to access this and get it into the hands of educators. I want to just close my time with a quote that is probably the most powerful that I've encountered in all of the readings I've done over the last 3 or 4 years on this mind-boggling ideology that is attacking our children. And really, it's undoing the very cords of our society. It's undoing the very social contract that holds us together. But we can't allow it. And with all my heart, I believe we have the power to not allow it, because love is more powerful than hate. And however much they may hate the truth, or they may hate our children's ability to reproduce and to thrive, our love for our children and for the truth is greater. So what I'm going to share with you is from an article entitled "The Transgender Movement is a Vehicle for Censorship and State Power." It's a little bit long, but it is so worth. So stay with me for a second, and it's where I will close. Most assume the transgender movement is just a simple matter of protecting from discrimination. Let me start again. Most assume the transgender movement is just a simple matter of protecting from discrimination a tiny demographic. But when you consider the enormous degree of state-sponsored censorship that is required by this movement, and the punishment that is meted out to people of conscience by every one of the laws its activists seek to pass, a very different story reveals itself. Its extreme individualism demands the breakdown of society's mediating institutions, such as family, faith, and private association, that serves as a buffer zone that protects the individual from state meddling. It sows chaos into the language, requiring us all, universally and without exception, to accept seismic changes in the very definition of what it means to be human. It requires a very aggressive program of censorship and propaganda in order to sustain itself and prop up its illusions over any commonly understood reality, and to condition people to get with the program. It sows, therefore, the conditions for totalitarianism. We have no choice but to speak out. I want to thank you for allowing me to be here today, for listening. And I encourage you to do whatever it takes to hold your children close, stand for them, protect them. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching the Northwest Safe Schools Summit. As you can see, attendees were informed, inspired, and motivated to take action. We partnered with several groups, including Quella Winery, Oregonians for Fair Elections, Western Liberty Network, Pacific Justice Institute, Building Education for Students Together, and KSLM Radio. We are happy you decided to learn more about the issues in K-12 public schools today. It just makes sense. Activism can be enjoyable when you are surrounded with like-minded people. And together, we win. We invite you to visit our website, parentsrightsined.org. Take a look around. There are issues pages just for our state chapters, because state laws are different. Join us. Make your voice heard. Is always best when you are with others. Submit the online chapter form. You will also be added to our email list. We help with training, information, branding, and contacts. Like us on Facebook. For the most current news, follow us, comment, and of course, share. Join a pre-Facebook group in your state or local school district. Subscribe to the podcasts, Parents' Rights Now. These are not meant to be entertaining, but provide valuable information, catching you up on the issues quickly. Would you like to help us? Our mission is possible. We've created a great program equipping parents and citizens with the tools they need to be effective in their local school districts. Join the 12 by 12 Club, our small monthly giving program. All donations are important and appreciated, but we know that you have expenses and family obligations, especially if you're a parent. You can do the most by giving a small amount every month. Just $12 a month will go towards our operational expenses and allow PRE to host another summit. Parents' Rights in Education is a tax-deductible 501c3 organization. Donate online or send a check to the address shown here. We are engaged in a war for the hearts and minds of our children. The left has taken control of the K-12 government school bureaucracy, using local public schools for distribution centers to change the culture. Their ultimate goal is to annihilate the constitutional republic of the United States by dismantling the nuclear family and destroying the Christian church. Your contributions are more necessary now than they have ever been.